Welcome to episode number 59 of the Fitness Hippie podcast. I'm your host as always, Mark Torres, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about diet because this is the Fitness Hippie's Guide to Nutrition. Talk about diet and nutrition a fair amount on this podcast if you've listened to episodes before, and I think obviously it's pretty tightly intertwined with what I do as a personal trainer. I can write the best program out there from A to Z, top to bottom. It's perfect. Client can execute the program at 100% capacity, but if their diet is not in check, it's not going to matter because they're not going to make progress. So obviously I have to have this sort of base knowledge of diet and nutrition in order to help clients reach point A or reach point B from point A. But that being said, I'll preface this like I preface every other nutritional statement that I make on this podcast. I am not a registered dietitian. Registered dietitian, if you find yourself in a scenario where, let's say, maybe there's a medical instance that can be remedied through your nutrition and your diet, that is a perfect situation where you should go to a registered dietitian. These people go to school and to college for a very long time and spend lots and lots of money in order to call themselves a registered dietitian. They can give you very specific guidelines and instructions in terms of what to eat, how much to eat of it, and when to eat it in order to best rectify your medical situation, or if you find yourself kind of spiraling out of control with your dietary habits. And that is a perfect situation to go to a registered dietitian. That is what they went to school for. Myself as a personal trainer, and I speak on behalf of all personal trainers to ever have lived, I am not, and personal trainers should not give you specific dietary information. We can give you guidelines. We can give you these general things for you to try to follow. Some personal trainers go as far as making cookbooks. They give you great suggestions. All that is fine. It's a kind of bit of a gray area, but I don't care how many nutritional certifications you have. I don't care how many classes you took in college. As a personal trainer, you can and should not be giving out specific dietary advice. So if you are listening to this podcast, none of this is going to be specific information. This is more guidelines for you to follow, things that you can implement in your own fitness journey with the own decisions that you decide to make. But otherwise, if you kind of go out into the world and you see a personal trainer out there giving very specific advice, just know that they are full of shit and that you should not probably believe them unless they end up being a person who is a registered dietitian and personal trainers, because I'm sure that there are some of those out there. But just a regular old degular personal trainer, do not take dietary specific information from them. That is like if you pop your meniscus and you send your dentist to go in there and fix it. It makes no sense. It is not the same area of expertise. So now that that's out of the way, this is hopefully going to act as my kind of piece de resistance. That was a terrible French accent, but this is going to be hopefully my not end all be all, but if somebody were to ask me any sort of nutritional question, right? Because now on TikTok, the two main questions that I get are how do I lose weight and how do I build muscle, which are two things that are very heavily nutritiously involved. So anytime I get a fitness or a nutrition and diet question, I can refer them to episode 59 of the Fitness Hippie podcast, because this is going to be hopefully everything and anything that I think that you need to know about nutrition. So without further ado, let's get into the Fitness Hippie's Guide for Nutrition. So I think the first thing that you guys should know is that this shit is really difficult. Much like the game of golf is very simple in its concept. You've got a little white ball, you've got a bag full of clubs, and then you whack the ball a bunch of times until it reaches the ultimate endpoint, which is the hole. And the hole could be anywhere from like 100 yards to like 500 plus yards away. So it's a very simple game in its concept, but the execution of golf is obviously very, very, very difficult. There's 1.5 million things that can go on in your swing that will affect where the ball goes. And it's especially infuriating when you figured it out and you've got this perfect swing, you've got these perfect shots going, and then all of a sudden something changes and you're yanking them bitches into the woods, and it's a whole thing, right?
Throw his hat in the ring for contenders, but this is...
What am I doing, dude?
it's a game that is very difficult to execute, even though it is a very simple concept. I guess maybe even a better example is basketball. Basketball is really simple. If you're watching sports with somebody who's never watched sports in their life, basketball might be the easiest one to explain. Of course, there's more intricacies and like strategy and things that go on. But for the most part, it's 5 guys on one team, 5 guys on the other team. These 5 guys are trying to put the ball in this basket, and the other 5 guys are trying to put the ball in the other basket. And there's only one ball, so they're fighting for possession. It's a very easy game to explain on that surface level. But in the summer, like when I don't feel like going out for a run and doing cardio that way, I'll go in the backyard and I'll try to put up some shots. And I'll say, this is the spot right here. I'm going to put up 10 shots. And I usually only make 2 or 3 of them. It's such a simple concept of a game. You put the ball up, you shoot it, you try to make it in the basket, but I absolutely suck at it. So the execution is much more difficult than the concept itself. Diet and nutrition is the same exact way. The concept of diet and nutrition is actually pretty simple, but the execution of it is very, very difficult. So if you find yourself kind of spinning wheels, and you find yourself that at some point in your life you have started and stopped the finish journey, you are not alone. Not that that's any kind of like reconciliation, or that's kind of like a way to make you feel like, you know, I don't want to like sugarcoat this, but you are not alone when you're out there on your fitness journey and you find yourself struggling and spinning your wheels. Not that that's to make you feel any better, because you're still very frustrated, but just know that it is a very difficult thing to try to execute, especially depending on your circumstances. So that's the first thing that I want to get out of the way, because thing number 2, now we're going to get into the concept of nutrition and diet. If you are a person who is attempting to change your appearance, you have an appearance goal. So there's performance goals and appearance goals. A performance goal might be like, I want to bench 200 pounds. An appearance goal is I want to lose 5 pounds, whatever, because you're trying to change the way you appear. If you have appearance goals, it's going to be very strongly influenced by your nutrition. So the first thing, I guess the second thing that you should know, aside from it being difficult as shit, is that calories are the main driver of weight change. Whether or not it's you want to gain weight, or you want to lose weight, or you want to maintain weight, the calories are the thing that ultimately matter. I should have read it before I started recording the podcast, but that's what I do. I record before I read, and it's going to get me in trouble at some point, but I will put the article in the description down below. PrecisionNutrition.com is a great place for beginner nutrition and diet expertise and knowledge. They do a really great job of like, this paragraph is what you absolutely need to know. This next paragraph, if you want to go deeper, you can read it. If not, skip it, because you already know the basics. They do a really great job of that. And they had a meta-analysis of data, and I want to say it's 1 million data points, and that could be completely wrong number of data points, but it was a large amount, whatever the amount of data points were. And these data points pretty much indicated that, like, there was pretty much a study that was done where there was 2 groups of people, and they ate 2 very drastically different diets. One was either like high in protein or fat, and the other one was high in carbs. Whatever the macronutrient was, the actual contents of their diet were very different between these 2 groups. But both groups ate the same amount of calories. So in this particular situation, the experiment, the control is the calories, because the calories are the same amongst both groups. The variable was the macronutrient, whether it was fat and protein or protein and carbs or whatever it was. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what they found with this study was that both groups of people ended up losing the same amount of weight. So there was no statistical, I always fuck that up, there was no statistical difference and significance between the amount of weight loss between both groups, which means that the control, which was the calories that they consumed, was ultimately the one thing that drove the weight loss more than anything else. If it was the variables, if it was the content of the diet, whatever macronutrient it was, then you would have seen a different amount of weight loss between both groups. And I'm sure that there's multiple other studies out there that are indicative of calories being the main driver of weight change. And there has been this big monumental shift in the fitness industry where if you go on TikTok at all right now, you're probably going to see a video about a calorie deficit, which is great because that's ultimately the only thing that you need to know in terms of like manipulating your weight and manipulating your appearance, right? So ultimately it is the calories that matter. And now after hearing that, there's 2 things that might have spun off into your brain in terms of like questions, right? I say calories are the only thing that matters. One thing that you might say is like, what about all these different diets out there? There's the ketogenic diet. There's intermittent fasting. There's a bunch of other smaller ones like paleo, Mediterranean, carnivore, all these things. But ketogenic diet, the keto diet, and intermittent fasting has stood the test of time and are as popular now as they ever have been before. So is there something special about these diets that make them work outside of just the calorie deficit or the calories itself? And I would say that there's no right or wrong, and there's also nothing special about these diets, right? As long as you understand that the mechanism that makes these diets work or not work is still calories, you're in a really good place. So let's say that you find out, and I'll go over this in the back part of this episode. Let's say you find out that you need to have 2,000 calories in your diet every single day. That might be your daily caloric goal, and that'll help you lose half a pound of body weight per week, 2,000 calories. So there's nothing special about the ketogenic diet that makes that 2,000 calorie number null and void. You still have to hit that number no matter what. It's not like if you're doing keto and you're in ketosis, you can magically eat 2,500 calories and still have the same amount of progress. No, you still have to hit that 2,000 calories whether or not you're doing keto or not. So that number still matters. And it could be intermittent fasting, it could be any other diet out there, because there's 1.5 million diets. They come and go all the time. So ultimately, at the end of the day, these diets, they still have to adhere to the amount of calories that your body needs in order to, manipulate your weight in any which direction that you want to. So the mechanism that works is still the calories. The good thing about diets, and it's going to be different for everybody, is hopefully your diet provides a bit of enjoyability. And that statement right there might be perplexing in and of itself, because you might be like, the fuck? Like, I've never done a diet where I found it to be enjoyable. Those two things don't compute with me. And that perfectly makes sense. I think that you just haven't found a diet that is best suited for you, because I think a real world example of this is like if a friend were to come up to me and says, hey, Mark, do you want to join this league? And this league is a softball league. I grew up playing baseball for many years. I think obviously baseball and softball are very different, especially if it's like slow pitch softball versus, I was playing fast pitch baseball. That is a different sort of swing pattern and everything. But my skills and the things that I grew up doing translate probably pretty well from baseball to slow pitch softball. I would be able to make that transition pretty smoothly, versus if something says, hey, Mark, you want to join our intramural basketball league? I'm absolutely hot garbage at basketball. It's not going to translate that well for me. It's too far away from what I've been used to doing. So if you can find a diet that is kind of that same concept where you can say, all right, I already eat sort of similarly to this particular diet, and I can just make these small little changes to better adhere to that diet, that is where you're going to thrive, because that's going to be a small enough change for you to make, and hopefully put you in a process where you are eating the amount of calories that you should be eating, because you have the structure of the diet set in place, and it's not too big of a change for you to make. I think if you ever try a diet, and you can go back and start to reach in the recesses of your brain right now and think about all the diets that you've ever tried and how long they've lasted, how much success you've had with them, how many times you've tried them, because you probably have tried maybe multiple diets in your life, and some to varying degrees and some to varying lengths of time. Once you start to kind of go back into the recesses of your mind and see which ones lasted and which ones didn't last, the ones that didn't last were probably too big of a change that you tried to make all in one shot. Like, think about all the big decisions that you've ever made in your entire life. Like, you've bought a car, maybe you're at the point where you've bought a house, maybe you've married somebody, maybe you decided to go to college. All these things are very big decisions for you to make, and all these big decisions take a lot of time to make, because it is a big decision to make. It's a lot of change happening all at once. So if you've made big decisions before, there's been a lot of prep time that goes into it, or you were expecting it much more in advance than when it actually happened, right? It takes a long time to make these big changes. If you've ever made a big change in your life very abruptly and very quickly, there's a pretty good chance that it ended up maybe not working out, right? There's a big difference between me hopping in my car and going to a grocery store that's literally 3 minutes away and buying a $6 pint of Ben & Jerry's. I can get adventurous with that pint of Ben & Jerry's, and I might say, this flavor sounds interesting. It's not something that I would typically grab or go for, but it sounds interesting enough. Let me try it. I take it home. I start eating it. I don't like it. I throw it in the garbage. It sucks. I wasted Ben & Jerry's. I didn't get to eat ice cream. I lost $6, but that is a lot different than me going into my car, driving 20 minutes to a car dealership and trying to get a car that day without doing any research. Like, you've got to know what car you want, the reviews of that car, how much the car costs, what year car you want, what are your financing options. All these different things go into account when it comes to buying a car. It's a much bigger decision than buying a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. That's why you're at the dealership for hours and hours at a time, because you're dealing with tens of thousands, presumably, dollars of money. It's not something that you can just do in an instance, right? You've got to gear up for these big decisions. So if you find yourself making too big of a change in your diet, whatever diet you end up choosing, it's going to be really hard for you to stick with it and be sustainable with it. But as long as you can find something that's kind of akin to what you're doing already, you can make small changes to better adhere to that diet, and you can still adhere to the amount of calories that your body needs. That is where you're going to thrive. That is where you need to be. So that was thought number one. Thought number two might be, if calories are the only thing that matters, does that mean that I can eat absolutely anything and everything that I want? And I think from a technical standpoint, that's kind of true, because if you find out that you need 2,000 calories for your body to lose half a pound of body weight a week, you can feasibly eat anything as long as it constitutes 2,000 calories, and you're going to make that progress. But two things happen. One, you might be very hungry while you do it. Secondly, the amount of weight loss or weight manipulation in general is going to be kind of shitty. And what I mean by that is, a great example is myself last night. I had PB Over the Top, which is a new Ben & Jerry's flavor, and one of the more calorically dense flavors that there are out there, because the entire pint is 1,300 calories. So I think for me in general, I haven't checked in a while, but I think I need maybe 22 to 2,400 calories in order to maintain my body weight. Or maybe something like that. I haven't looked at it in a while. Let's say a little over 2,000 calories a day I can consume without doing too much damage to the scale. So for me, if I take out that 1,300 calories of Ben & Jerry's, that gives me about 1,000 calories to play with for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which is not a lot. So it's going to be really hard for me to remain full throughout the entirety of the day, because I took a pint of Ben & Jerry's to the face early. Now I got to use the bathroom because my stomach hurts, and now I'm hungry for the rest of the day because I don't have that many calories left over because I spent it all on something very calorically dense. So you're going to run into that problem a lot if you're trying to have like this very loosey-goosey daily caloric goal where you're trying to eat anything and everything in order to hit that caloric deficit number. Secondly, if I do manage to do it and I'm not completely miserable, the amount, kind of the body composition that I'm losing or gaining is not going to be very crisp, right? You can have two people, like Dave Bautista is like an absolutely massive human being. He's like the same size as an NFL lineman, but they look very different. Same height, same weight, but their body compositions are drastically different. And that's kind of the ultimate thing that's going to happen if you're losing or gaining weight. You're going to have a better body composition if you do it the correct way, where you're eating mostly whole foods. You have lots of good protein in your diet, lots of complex carbs, all these things that you probably already know. Your body composition is going to be better in terms of the progress that you make, whether you're losing weight or gaining weight, versus if you're doing it in like kind of a loosey-goosey way where you're trying to have the most fun possible and maximize that. It's going to be, you're still going to make progress, but the body composition that you get after making that progress might not be optimal. So if you can find the balance between the two, that is ultimately the best place to be. So in terms of like macronutrients and things like that, it's going to be different for everybody. And I'm not going to really touch on that here too much. But now that you know all these things, now that you know that calories are the main driver, this shit is difficult. Diets don't really matter as long as you find something that is enjoyable and sustainable for you, and that you can and also can't eat just everything. You should be smarter about your decisions more often than being not smart. Now that you know all these things, the next step is trying to help kickstart your fitness journey and your diet and nutrition. So I think step number one is figuring out how many calories your body needs. And very simply, the easiest thing that you can do is just Google calorie calculator. There's going to be 1.5 million options that pop up. Try a whole bunch of them. I say anywhere from 3 to 5. The more you try, the better of an outlook you'll see, right? There's going to be some that are drastically different because it just depends on the formula that they use. There's going to be, hopefully most of them are relatively around the same ballpark. And hopefully the more you try, the better of a picture you'll get. If you get a bunch of them and they're all like 1,800 calories, 1860 calories. Maybe one says 19, maybe one says 17, 5. you know they're all hovering around 18. You get one random one that says like 1400, that's an outlier. You can probably throw that away. The more you do, the better of a picture that you'll get for what your actual needs are. So the more calorie calculators, you'll get a better picture. Once you kind of find out those numbers, now you have a general idea, and make sure you know exactly what you're looking at, because some calorie calculators will say this is the amount of calories that your body needs to maintain its current body weight, or this is the amount of calories that you need for weight loss. So make sure that all the numbers are uniform. Once you know all those numbers, that is just still a guess. There's no way to absolutely know for sure how many calories your body needs. So now you have a little bit of a baseline. Now you can test that number out. If it is a number that is 2,000 calories is your maintenance goal, 2,000 calories a day will help you not fluctuate in weight. You're going to keep the same weight all the way throughout. You can test that number, or you can say, all right, my goal is to lose weight. So anything below that number is going to help you lose weight. Anything above that number is going to help you gain weight. If you want to lose weight and you want to say, all right, if 2,000 calories is about my maintenance, if I try to eat 1,800 calories and do that for a bunch of weeks, let's see how my body sort of reacts to that. And if you're losing weight, then you're in the right place. You're doing a great job. If you're not losing any weight and you're kind of fluctuating, maybe that number is more closer to your maintenance. Like I said, it's just a complete guess anyways. So you're going to have to be doing a little bit of trial and error at the beginning. But hopefully, the more information you have, the better it is going to be going forward, and the easier it is going to be going forward for you to make progress, because now you have more information to base your decisions off of. And then I think from there, once you kind of get your calories in check, thing number 2 is you've got to consume a decent amount of protein. And for most people's goal is going to be 1 gram per pound of body weight. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you should probably be trying to eat around 200 grams of protein. But I'll say this, you know exactly how much, or not exactly, but you have a ballpark estimation of how much protein you consume right now. If you consume protein once a day, it's probably not anything more than like 40 or 50 grams of protein if you're eating a lot of it. You probably have a general idea. You might not get to 200 if you're a 200-pound person. That's a massive jump for you to make. It's anywhere from 150 to 170 grams of protein for you to add all in one shot. You're not going to do that all in one shot. You're going to incrementally try to increase that and see how your body reacts. And then hopefully from there, everything else starts to fall into place, because once you have your protein in place and your calories are in check, the carbs and the fats will hopefully kind of work themselves out. And that's pretty much all that you need to do in order to ensure a pretty good and a pretty decent weight loss or weight gain journey from there on forward. And in terms of manipulating your calories, if you find yourself trying to eat 2,000 calories as your daily goal, that's your goal for losing weight, and you're already used to eating 3,000 calories, don't feel the need to make that jump all at once. 1,000 calories to drop from your diet is a lot. Make that smaller incremental jump. It's going to be much more easier for you. Smaller adjustments, smaller changes is going to eventually lead you to more success than bigger changes and stalling and stopping all the time. That is hopefully my inclusive guide, your fitness hippie's guide to nutrition. Hopefully you learned a bunch of information today. If you want more in-depth information, depending on how specific and in-depth you want to get into, you can always send me a message on Instagram at MTEFit. Hopefully I can answer your questions depending on how specific it is. If it's very specific, you might have to look into maybe a registered dietitian in your area that you can talk to. But hopefully this gives you enough information for you to kickstart your fitness journey. If you need any help, absolutely hit me up. If you enjoyed today's podcast episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the whole 9. Follow me on Instagram, and that's the best place to kind of get a hold of me at MTEFit. If you want to send me a message with any questions that you have, I might answer them on the podcast. I might make a video about it. And also follow me on TikTok at MTEFit. Hopefully you enjoyed this all-inclusive fitness hippie's guide to nutrition. I will see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.